Welcome to the CC Risa EdTech Summer Stretch Micro PD series. This asynchronous summer learning series is meant to help educators and leaders learn at their own pace within their own space throughout the summer using more reasonably sized or micro PD chunks. Each episode will only be about 30 minutes with the content organized to be easily applicable to implement into your workflow tomorrow. After reviewing each episode, be sure to complete the 2-minute reflection feedback survey found in your email blast. I'm Allison Rogers, Instructional Technology Specialist at Clinton County RISA, and I will be your host throughout these micro PD episodes. So let's go ahead and dive right in to our first episode called Organize Your Google Life. The purpose of this session is to showcase various tips and tricks to help you become more organized, efficient, and productive within your G Suite tools, and we'll be focusing specifically on Gmail, Calendar, and Google Drive. So let's start with some tips that I call oldies but goodies. These are really important, crucial things to know within your G Suite that you might already know, but if you don't, this will really help your workflow and efficiency. Okay, the first tip, .new domain shortcuts. If you go to Google Chrome and you start typing any of these shortcuts, you're going to be able to open up a brand new doc, sheet, slide, form, or site. So I open Chrome and I just simply start typing docs.new and it will automatically open up a brand new Google Doc. And again, this same shortcut can be used for sheets, slides, forms, and sites in addition to docs. All right, the next tip is rearranging the order of your apps within the Google Apps Launcher. So just as a reminder, you can find your apps launcher in Drive. It's the little waffle. You can also find it in Calendar up at the top right hand corner or Gmail. So let's say I'm in Drive and I want to easily go to my next app. I can select any of these shortcuts, but what I can do to organize these apps, and maybe I have a couple that I frequently go to more often than others, I can drag and drop to rearrange these apps to make them in the order that I want, right? Like maybe I want to easily have the Google Docs up at the top, or maybe I use Jamboard a lot more than Keep, so I switched around. However you want to organize it, just drag and drop, and then once you have that set and you get out of it and you go back into it, you'll see that your changes will stay the same. The next tip is how to force a copy. If you want your end user to skip the step where they have to manually make a copy of your doc, slide, or sheet, you can actually alter the URL of the link of your document to force a copy. So let me show you how this works. So I'm going to open up the slide deck that I'm using right now, for example, and I want to make sure that I have the sharing permissions set accordingly. It has to be shared with anyone with the link, or it has to be set to public. So I'm going to go ahead and alter that share setting right now. I click done. Okay, so now my share settings are set properly, and what I'll do is go up to the top and go all the way over to the right until I find the end of that URL, and I'm going to replace this word edit with copy. Okay, and so now when I grab that URL and copy it, and then I can share that link, throw it in an email, throw it in an agenda, have my end users click on that, and then I'll show you what it looks like. When I enter that URL back in, it's going to not open up the slide deck, but open up this option that says, would you like to make a copy of this slide deck? And so as an end user, I would say, yep, I want to make a copy. I'd click make a copy, and it already does that step for you instead of having to manually go in and say, file, make a copy. So this is just one little shortcut to help your users make a copy of whatever they're trying to utilize, and it makes it a little bit more uncomplicated for those that might be unfamiliar with the file make a copy feature. The next step is the going incognito to test share settings. You can use the incognito window to test access to various documents and sheets and slides. So you can use this as a way to make sure that if you have a slide deck that you want to be locked down, you can make sure that it requires you to log in to access, or you can make sure that, let's say you have something set to anyone with a link can view, that when you go incognito you can in fact view it. So let me show you exactly what I mean by that. So to go incognito, I go up to the three dots on the right hand side and I select new incognito window. Now if for some reason you don't see this in your school Google Chrome account, incognito might be disabled. But if it's not, you'll see this little window that's got this little guy gone incognito. So what I would do is I would grab whatever link I want to test. So maybe, since I had just set the share settings for this to public, maybe I want to grab that link and just, maybe I had forgotten if I had done this. I can go back to my incognito window, paste that in there, and I should be able to view it, right? Because incognito means I'm not logged into any of my Google accounts. So it sort of has forgotten any logins, and in fact it's prompting me to sign in because it thinks that no one is logged in. Now, if I had my slide deck set to private, or maybe it's only shared with me, and I go to that incognito window and open up a new tab and paste in that new link, now it's having me actually sign into Google saying, this slide deck is not accessible to just anybody. Sign in and see if you have access to it. So again, this incognito option is nice if you have it within your Google Toolkit, just to check links and settings, especially when you get into maybe a slide deck where you've got a bunch of different links for people to click on. You want to make sure everybody has access. It's a quick and easy way to test those things. The next tip is schedule send your emails. So within Gmail you have a tool that allows you to write up an email and then schedule it to be sent out at a different date and time. So for example, I've written up this email, I'm ready to send it, but instead of clicking send, I click the little arrow to the right of the send, and then I click schedule send. And then it will say, here are some default times that you can select, or you can click the pick date and time to customize when specifically you want to do this further. So I could set this, as far as I want in the future. I can, set it to the specific time exactly. And then when I click schedule send, it's going to say this has been scheduled to be sent on this date. Okay, so once it's scheduled, I can go into what's called the scheduled folder and I can edit that email. But what I have to do to edit that email is unschedule it, change it, and then reschedule it. So within that scheduled folder, I found my email that I just scheduled, and you'll notice I can't make any changes to the actual email itself, but what I would have to do is cancel send, and then it would bring up this email that I can now change, and then I would have to just make sure that I reschedule send it. Right, so you can always edit an email that is scheduled to be sent, obviously unless it's past the date. Just know that if you want to edit it, you have to kind of undo the schedule, make the changes, then reschedule it. Next is Gmail canned responses. So if you ever find yourself writing the same email or using the same wording for multiple people for the same purpose, you might want to consider using this canned responses. Kind of what you're doing is creating a template that's saved in your Gmail that you can pull out and use time and time again. Okay, so my first step would be to write the email exactly how I want it to be able to save it as a template. One quick tip before you save your template is if you have an email signature, especially like mine that's pretty lengthy, I would recommend removing that from your template because it's going to automatically be there when you type the email. So otherwise it's going to have like a duplicate of your signature. Okay, so have your text the way you want it, remove your signature, and then click on the little three dots down at the bottom for more actions, and then under templates you will see a save draft as template option. And so what that's saying is this email right here, you're going to save it as a template. Okay, and then it's saying you can either override it as a previous template, you can see I have several, or save as new template. And now it's going to ask me what I want to call that template. Sure, great. Here's a sample. I click Save. Okay, so now when I go to, say I want to type a new email, and I want to use that canned response, I click 3 dots, Templates, and you'll see that I have my canned response sample right here. And you can see the reason I told you to get rid of the signature is that, it's already there when you open up an email. And so this text is there, it's good to go. I can edit it however I want and click Send. It's that simple. Next is Gmail Undo Send. You've likely used this feature before where you type up an email, send it out, and you gosh, oops, I forgot to add whatever, and you click the Undo Send button. So I'm going to show you what this looks like, but I'm also going to show you how to make sure you set yourself for the most time to be able to remember that you need to unsend that email. Okay, so I've got my email, I send it out, and down here it's saying, all right, message sent. But you can see this little undo button. So if I click undo, it's going to basically say, just kidding, here's your email, it wasn't actually sent. And I can make whatever changes I want, right? So one step further is going to this little gear icon within Gmail and select See All Settings. And then you'll see Undo Send, Send Cancellation Period, and the default I believe might be 10 seconds, but you want to make sure that it's set to 30 seconds. What that means is that you have 30 seconds between the time that you click Send to be able to click that Undo Send button, right? So if you're only giving yourself 5 seconds, odds are you might not remember to click Unsend or realize that you've forgotten something. So set it for 30 seconds and then be sure to click the Save Changes at the bottom to make sure that those are in fact set. Next is rearranging calendar events. You can actually just drag and drop calendar events from day to day to change their location. So for example, let's say I want to have this meeting moved to a different day. I can just drag and drop it. I can also drag and drop to change the time, right? So I don't have to manually click on it and edit it. I can just drag and drop to move the calendar date or time. The next one is duplicate or copy calendar events. So another way to quickly adjust your calendar events. So let's say I want to basically create this same event again. Instead of manually clicking and starting from scratch, I could select that existing meeting, click the 3 dots, and select duplicate. And then I can, set whatever date I want. Additionally, I can also click that event and select copy to a different calendar. So let's say I wanted to have this exact event on multiple calendars. I could just copy it to whatever calendar, and that way I don't have to manually go in and create it in both places. So it's yet another time saver within Calendar. Next is a shortcut to jump to any date in your Google Calendar by pressing G. So if you want to create an event, and let's say you want it to be next year, instead of having to go like all the way over to find it, what you could do is actually just click the G key as a shortcut, and it will say, okay, what date do you want to go to? And then so you could just say, all right, I want to go to the next year, and it automatically pulls up your schedule for the next year. So you can go to any date by just hitting G, and it says where to. Okay, this next section we're going to talk about newer tips and updates with respect to G Suite for Drive, Gmail, and Calendar. The first update we're going to talk about is seeing changes in Google Docs over time with Compare Documents. This Compare Documents is a new feature that's come out that basically makes it easier to compare to Google Docs so you can see the differences between the two. So maybe, for example, you want to track like revisions, compared versions of essays when grading. So it's, see the writing process. You can compare 2 documents and then it will actually create a third document to show you sort of the differences between the two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Google Doc that's going to become my base document. I go to Tools, I select Compare Documents, and now it's asking me, what document do you want to compare this to? So I would go in and select the other document. So in this case, scroll down to my sample one, I click Open, and where it says attribute differences 2, this is where you're going to enter the name of the user who will be labeled the author of this other document. Obviously this is me, so I'm going to leave my name here, but if it was different, then you would change the name. And then this last option is include comments from the selected document. If you have comments in your Google Docs, you can select that. I don't have this in this example. Then I click Compare, and what it's going to do is create this third document. It's a comparison document. So I click Open, and it's going to open up this third document and actually show me the changes or the differences between the two, right? So you can see that in one document I have this bolded and in another I don't. In one document I have this content removed, in another I don't. And you can see on the right hand side it will say like who has done what changes and what those specific changes are, right? So even if this is the same person making these changes, it would be helpful, like I said before, for the writing process. If this was a collaborative effort, then you could see, you know, the different people and what they did as far as making edits. So this is that comparison tool. Again, you go to your Google Doc, you select Tools, Compare Documents, and then select the document and the attributes. Next up is Google Drive Workspaces. This is a place for you to kind of almost create an unofficial table of contents where you can bookmark your various files within Drive to access them more easily without actually changing the location of the files. So in my Google Drive, you have your My Drive, but then you also have the space up above it called Priority. And that is where, you know, your frequent flyer documents that you've been in quite a bit live up at the top once they load. But down below, you'll see this option for creating what's called a workspace. And so what I can do is click Create, and it will ask me to give it a title. Click Create, and then what it's going to do now is say, okay, I'm creating the workspace. Now what files do you want to actually have live in this workspace? Again, we're kind of almost creating a shortcut or a bookmark to these files that you want to live specifically within this topic. So I can hold down Control and select, you know, whatever it is I want to add in there, click Insert, and those files will now be added to that workspace. I can continue to add files here. I can hover over a file, click the three dots, and I can add it to a different workspace, or I can also remove it. Once I'm done with my changes, I'm going to click Done, and then I'll scroll down to the bottom, and it will have added my workspace here. It's going to be alphabetized. So here I can click the three dots and I can change the name again. I can remove the workspace. Again, by removing the workspace, it's not deleting the files, it's just getting rid of this little table of contents. Okay. Again, I can click on this and alter things. I can also click on individual files and add them to different places or different workspaces. I can also go to within my Drive, if I wanted to go to an actual file and add it to a workspace from there, I would just simply need to right click and then just say add to workspace, and pick the right workspace, and it'll be added. So again, this lives under Priority, and it's just a quick way to access things in an organized fashion that maybe you frequently want to find at your fingertips. Next is the comment feature to assign tasks. So what you can do is actually, instead of just making comments in a Google Doc, for example, you can customize it by adding someone specifically to that comment and assigning a task. So saying, hey, can you make these changes? And they'll actually get an email notification. So instead of having to go into that Google Doc and say, oh, has anyone made the changes yet? You'll actually get notified by using that assign task feature. So for example, in my sample document, I can just do a normal comment by clicking the little blue button, add a comment, and then add my comment, right? So this isn't customized to any specific person. This is just a comment. Now let's say I want to take it one step further and kind of personalize my comment and adding a specific name to it. So maybe this is a collaborative document working together. So I click comment, but then you'll notice here it says comment or add others with @ sign. So I could say @ and then select, whoever I'm working with, and then I can still add my comment. And now what's going to happen is if I select this assign button, what it's going to do is notify that person that I've made this comment and that I'm assigning this task to them. So instead of, if you're working on a collaborative document, instead of having to go into the Google Doc to see if someone has made changes or reviewed it, or having to go in and make a separate email to say, hey, I've looked at it, made the changes. Now this is sort of an interaction where you can assign a task, and then when you click assign, they'll receive an email to say, hey, this is happening. They can go in, make those changes, and resolve that task. And so it's this constant communication without having to actually go into the doc to see if it's been altered. So this assigning a task is just taking that comment feature one step further, just to make it a little bit more efficient. The next tip is showing you how to customize your Google Drive files and folders with color coding and emojis. So this isn't necessarily a new concept, but I think helping your Google Drive get as organized as possible by naming conventions is the first step, and then I think color coding, changing the colors of your files, and then additionally adding emojis can help organize. What's nice about adding emojis is since we can't order the Google Drive files in the way we want, they're alphabetized naturally, adding an emoji or a number automatically brings the folder to the top of your Google Drive list. So this might be something to consider when you want, folders easily visible at the top of your Google Drive list. So you can see I have a couple files that are, or folders that are color coded, and then I've added emojis. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm just going to pick a folder, and I'm going to right click and change the color. I select change color, and I pick the color that I want. And you can see now that it's changed. To alter the title or add an emoji, I'm going to right click and select rename. And then I can use any emoji site that I want, or an extension. But if you want to use actually your computer's emoji keyboard, if you're using Windows, you just select the little Windows button and then period, and it will pop open the emoji keyboard automatically. And then you can go and find the emoji that you want to use. Keep in mind that the emojis look a little bit different here than they do on the list on the left hand side, but you'll get the idea. So I select that, that's what I want, I click OK. And now not only has that been added to the list, but since it's an emoji, has brought up this folder higher up on my list, right? So emojis and numbers, for whatever reason, come first in this alphabetizing process for Google Drive. So that is how you color code and add emojis to your folders. The same thing can be said for if you wanted to add an emoji to a specific file title. Again, I would just right click, rename, and then use my shortcut. It's Control Command if you're using a Mac, but for Windows it's that window button, period, and then I select the corresponding emoji that I want to use and click OK, and now it's changed the emoji in front of the title of that specific document. Next up, propose a new meeting time or add a note to calendar invites from Gmail. So let's say you get an email notification saying, hey, you have this meeting coming up, or you've been invited, and instead of just emailing back saying, oh, this time won't work, can we try this one, and having to go back and forth via email, there's actually an option within Gmail for you to kind of send that notification, that time suggestion right within there. So this is my invitation for my sample meeting, and I can obviously reply yes, maybe, or no, but to the right I can click more options and either add a note to go along with my response. So maybe my response is no, and I want to, explain why. Or I could say propose a new time, and it's going to open up my calendar and let me kind of see what's available. So I might see that, I have another meeting from 2 to 4 that time. So I might want to suggest a different option. And if that other person's calendar is shared with me, I'm going to be able to see that so I can figure out which might work best for both of us. So I can suggest a different time. So my suggestion might be, let's go earlier in the day, and I can alter my RSVP here as well, add a message if I'd like, and then send the proposal. And then what that will do will send an email notification to that person saying, here's the current time of the meeting, but here is what this person proposed. And what they can do is just simply click accept, and then doesn't need to be any more emails back and forth about, does this time work, does this time work. If they click accept, we both know that this alternate time works best for both of us. Next up is changing the subject line in Gmail. So maybe you have an email thread going back and forth, and it's quite lengthy, and you've gotten to the point where maybe your content doesn't really match the subject and you want to bring somebody else in, or you want to forward it. You can reply, but then actually change the subject line to make sure it matches the content. So I have this fake thread going back and forth, and what I can do is, let's say I want to respond to the email, I click reply, but I want to edit the subject line. So now I click in this little arrow to the left of the name, and instead of reply or forward, you just click edit subject, and then what it's going to do is give you the option to change the subject of the actual email. And so now it's the same thread, it just now has a different subject line, and so you can continue your email here and then send it out, and the new subject line will reflect the content of your email. Our last section is devoted to G Suite updates that are coming soon. So we have a couple of pretty cool new features happening specifically in Google Docs that aren't quite available yet, but I thought they were worth mentioning because I think they're going to be really helpful for efficiency and workflow. Keep in mind that each domain is on a different release schedule, so you may have some of these items now, or you might not have them for a few weeks or months. So the first is insert smart chips, and what that refers to is essentially adding more interactivity within the Google Doc. So you can already use a smart chip when you mention a person in a doc. So when you actually type in their name but use the @ sign in the doc, it displays their contact information. So I'll show you what that looks like. So if I'm in just a sample Google Doc and I use the @ sign and I start typing the name of whoever I want to mention, now if I hover over this, it's going to show the credentials and contact information of that person, right? So that's how you mention a person in the document. But they're going to take this one step further, and let me show you within their little screenshot here. So they're going to say you can @ someone, but then additionally you're going to see the files that are associated with that person, and you can actually link, like you can click on the Google Doc that is shared with you and that person and link it within your Google Doc. Additionally, you'll eventually be able to see events, connected to your calendar. So there's a lot of interactivity that's going to happen within Docs that are kind of just going to make it one step faster to, click on links or not have to search so much for links or not have to search for people or the, documents that are shared with those people. So they're really taking it a step further. They also are going to allow you to insert links using drive file suggestions. So you're going to insert a link, and then based on the text you've highlighted or the document you're working in, they're going to give suggestions that make sense. So you can see this is their little sample screenshot where if you highlighted this text and wanted to insert a link, it's going to give you suggestions of what might make sense as far as files to link there. And so it's using kind of your workflow within that document to select files that make sense. And the last new feature they're going to be coming out with is the ability to insert checklists into your Google Docs. So what it looks like, it'll just make collaboration a little bit easier. Using these checklists, you'll actually be able to check off tasks to inform next steps, and using those smart chips to assign tasks to people, link documents right within using those smart chips. So the whole smart chip concept is really, I think, going to revolutionize the collaboration features that Google Docs offer. So in this episode, we've covered some oldies but goodies in terms of tips and tricks. We've referenced some newer updates over the past year, and then also forecasted some fun new features that should be coming soon. So thank you for joining the CC Reset EdTech Summer Stretch Micro PD series, episode number 1, Organize Your Google Life. Be sure to complete the 2-minute reflection feedback survey found in your email blast, and then make sure you stay tuned for next week's episode, Templatify Your Workflow. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out for additional support. And thanks for listening.